Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you for joining us today and this webinar session as we go ahead and proceed with research findings and summary results from our brand research strategy that we've conducted for Nebraska Tourism. Let us introduce ourselves. I'm Kathy McKillop and I'm the Executive Director with Nebraska Tourism Commission. To my right is Don Anderson is a strategy advisor with Believable Brands, and to my left is Gary Sherwin with Believable Brands as well, also a strategy advisor. Coming up later in the program will be Rich Clausen, who is with our Bailey Lauerman creative team, and he will be presenting results as well. There's a couple key points I want to mention right now before we get started, is that we will be fielding questions towards the end of the webinar, and that email address that you can send your questions to is angela.white@nebraska.gov or heather.hogue, H-O-G-U-E, @nebraska.gov. Again, quickly, angela.white@nebraska.gov, heather.hogue @nebraska.gov. They will be fielding questions for us, which we will respond to at the end of the presentation. So go ahead and write those names down and make sure that you can send that email to us as well. The brand development that's recognized for successful Nebraska tourism started a couple years ago. We struck out to create a strategy as part of our strategic plan. Our strategic plan was a legislative initiative from LB 684. This directive charged Nebraska Tourism with crafting a statewide strategic plan. 18 recommendations came from that strategic planning process. Of those 18, to date, 14 have been completed by the Nebraska Tourism Commission. Today, we're addressing one of those components, which is a brand strategy research process. Nebraska Tourism has some marketing challenges. One of those that we are finding from these results is there is a low state tourism awareness, and we're working to increase the value of tourism and that awareness. 2, a predominant wide open space imagery. Now, some may perceive that as a positive or a negative. We perceive that as a positive, as the results will show later, as Don and Gary will go over those. And 3, a base level of leveraged brand partnership formations, meaning that once we compile all this information and present it, it will help us build stronger partnerships and collaborative efforts across the state with communities and counties and attractions under our brand umbrella, which we hope everyone will be willing to share and buy into, because the results resonate with us as Nebraskans, and more importantly, they resonate with the outside potential visitor. Some of the findings that were released were that here we have easily accessible gateways to Nebraska. Nebraska is centrally located and easily able to get to. We have a very welcoming host. We're very friendly, and that's a positive for us. The other is we have a high price value proposition, meaning that we are a good bang for the buck. You get a good value and it's a good experience when you come to Nebraska for your vacation getaways. As a destination, that's very important. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Don Anderson and Gary Sherwin to reveal the findings from our strategic branding research.
Thank you. Great. Thank you, Kathy, and good afternoon, everyone. Don and I are thrilled to be here today with you to kind of discuss some of the things that we've learned in this process that began last fall. And so that you understand what our role is, Don and I are what they call brand strategists. We don't do taglines, logos, slogans. We don't design ads. What we really do is we are brand researchers. We collect data. We talk to people, including our visitors, non-visitors, and most importantly, we talk to many of you. And we talk to you about what you felt about the Nebraska experience. And what we do is we collect that information and create a strategic platform that allows creative agencies like Bailey Lauerman to then go out and actually create the ads that you see on TV and in newspapers. Again, this process is a methodology that's based on developing a solid brand strategy. You're not going to see any creative today. You're not going to see any ideas for new campaigns. You're going to understand, though, where we're going to be going, though, in terms of our strategic platform and what differentiates Nebraska from other states. And this is really what Don and I do. We develop brand platforms for tourism organizations at the state, local, regional level. We've done this many, many times. And the news today, by the way, is all good. We're going to be able to share some very positive results. The other thing that I hope you come away with as well is that many of you probably believe government should operate like a business. Well, the process that we're going to share with you today is no different than the way companies and corporations like Apple Computer or Disney or 3M or any of the companies that you admire go about branding themselves. This is a very much of a corporate type of methodology because it's based on looking at data and then coming up with rational conclusions based on that data. So I hope you'll appreciate that as well. But I think you'll be fascinated with some of the things that we've learned, and hopefully I think will be inspiring to you as well. So here's kind of where we've been going with this, is that we're trying to understand through our research and through these online surveys that Don's going to walk you through in just a little bit. We have a lot of data. We're going to be kind of going through it kind of quickly in the limited time we have today. But the idea is to really understand a brand which we define as functional benefits, meaning the things that bring people here, the attractions, the allures, along with the emotional benefits, those things that you feel when you go to a place. Because we're all emotional creatures, travel is a very emotional type of experience, and what we're trying to do is understand where Nebraska fits into that. What are the words that you use to describe? So, and at the end of this, we get to a brand promise, which we'll share with you, because the brand promise is the brand. The logo, slogan, ad line, there are ways to communicate the brand, but they're not the brand per se. So that's really what we're trying to do, is to understand the underlying motivators that would generate a visit to Nebraska. Because what Kathy and her team are trying to do is bring fresh new dollars into Nebraska. We're trying to find an effective messaging system to bring money in and enhance the economic vitality of this state.
Don Anderson, let's go over the program of work. This was a very comprehensive and inclusive record of gathering opinions and insights on what the Nebraska brand is. And we certainly want to declare right at this point in time, this research was so highly responded to that it was probably one of the best that we felt really defined not only this state, but also the experience in this destination. And you're going to see a slide that identifies the quantity, but again, we've been involved with a lot of branding efforts, and we just want to share with you that there was a lot of responses. Obviously, there's a major interest in what the Nebraska brand is and how we're going to communicate it in the future. So when we were here last year, we met with a number of you, and which was really important. In fact, we did have a webinar. We also had personal interviews. We had some focus groups. In fact, we talked to over 650 people were involved. And again, I think that was important to have a focus and sort of a good orientation. But at that time, we really did sort of put together an education program that defined what a brand is, what the expectations were going to be, so we're all on the same song sheet when it came to what this research was going to tell us. Along with that, we also went ahead and did research, competitive analysis with other states and how they're communicating their assets and their experiences. And again, we'll be sharing some of that information with regards to when we formally document everything. So this was important to do to make sure the setup was right, so we understood what branding is, how it relates to a state, and what was some of the information and advice that we needed to get from you, but also more importantly, our visitors and those potential visitors that would want to know more about Nebraska and what it has to offer. These are more details specifically on a key instrument of getting that information, which was the 3 online surveys across 4 audiences. And again, this was based on surveys, and these surveys varied from 10 to 20 questions. The larger surveys went out to visitors and potential visitors with the intent of getting to know their views. But also there were some comparable questions as we wanted to get opinions of those that live within the state, but also those that are investors in the visitor industry and also at the community level. And again, I think we're pleased to report, and you'll see the numbers at the bottom of this slide, that we had over 3,000 responses, which is the largest sampling we've ever had, to tell you the truth. And that's important because, again, it builds then the confidence of us drawing conclusions and that it's applicable to the whole population that we're discussing here. With that in the combined input that we had last year, then you can see that we were close to almost 4,000 people providing some type of information and insight. Also, we want to report to you, because again, we wanted to make sure this was representative statewide. There was a 55-45 ratio of responses from what we would say the east part of the state to the west part of the state. So it was almost equal. So again, this was not just related to one part of our state for those that provided input when it came to residents and the community stakeholders. Again, from a confidence level and the numbers and the margin of errors that you see here, all those are very acceptable, and again, because of the large responses, it allowed us then to have some very rich data to go through. And today we're going to share with you some of the top line results. We can't provide everything, but certainly questions and responses that are applicable to building that brand and the promise that goes with it. So let's get into some of those key results. We had a question, and in fact there's two related questions here on images and perceptions. This first one is dealing with functional images. This is related to things, what people would be doing, activity-based, attraction, event. And again, this was an open-ended question. That means it wasn't a list of things that people checked off. This was top-of-mind responses of what came to not only visitors that have been here, but also residents and stakeholders that we posed that same question. So these are the top 7, and again, it was by frequency, the number of mentions. So when we talk about Nebraska tourism as it relates to what people are associating that with across those 3 audiences, you can see the list. We should be proud, and of course, it's right at the top of our list, our world-class Omaha Zoo and Aquarium. It talked about a number of historic sites and attractions in our trails that were reasonably accessible, our Cornhuskers, our wide open spaces, our hospitality services in the Nebraska Sandhills. And again, when you look at this data, there's some real common reinforcement across those 3 audiences when it comes to wide open spaces. And we look at that descriptor or attribute as very positive. And what we would want to associate that is with activities that could be done here within the state. But a lot of people are looking for that opportunity of getting away, especially from the big cities, and getting out there and enjoying what we have, nature and so forth. And again, you can see that our aquarium right across those 3 audiences was supported. The next question was dealing with the emotional side of the question, but before we go that, this was just another way of illustrating some of those top brand activities. Again, just to reinforce the zoo, our Huskers, the wide open spaces, our Sandhills, and of course the potential visitors, which are ones that we want to encourage in the future, certainly had wide open spaces up there. Again, they're neutral. In a lot of cases, they may not necessarily associate anything at this point in time where it's specific when it comes to Nebraska. But again, that's for us to communicate and inform them better what we have to offer in the state.
And let's be clear on what potential is. These are people who have made inquiries to want to come to Nebraska, but haven't, for whatever reason, actually come. So they know about us, they've expressed an interest, and they have some preconceived ideas of what the destination's all about in their mind. And we want to capture that information. That's very important because it's not based on what they've seen, it's what they perceive the state to be. So that's why we call them potential. They sometimes are also called non-visitors, but they give us a rich source of information.
Also, we should reinforce through our methodology that when we talked to visitors, these weren't intercepts. These were based on email inquiries that came to the State Tourism Office, other destination marketing organizations and attractions who shared some of their email addresses with us. And the first question that we're posing to those visitors are, did you come? And if they did, then they're qualified as a bona fide visitor. And those that didn't, those are the ones that we wanted to spend some more time with. But those visitors didn't just come in the last quarter when we sent out the survey. They came throughout all of 2013 and even some into the previous year, the latter half in 2012. We wanted to have the most current information, but it's spread. So this information they're providing to you is certainly not seasonal. It's the typical visitor that would be coming to our state and potentially. That other question I mentioned to you was the emotional image, the perceptions. And again, these are across the three audiences. These are all positive attributes. And as you can see, with regards to friendliness and relaxation, that those stand out. In fact, you can see right across from our residents and stakeholders and visitors, they're thinking that they can, that they're sane, but also that residents and stakeholders can deliver on that, and that we believe firmly that we are a friendly host. But also that this is a place where we can relax, and again, it comes down to how you define relax and the things that you do with it. But all those are positive attributes, and again, these words aren't our words. This was open-ended question. These are words that our customers, our visitors, but even us are using. All we did was categorize it, but those are all positive, and again, we would want to use these feelings in any messaging in the future.
And again, when we talk about open-ended, that means you feel about Nebraska blank, meaning you come up with the word. It's not multiple choice. So these are words that they thought top of mind best describe the state, not what we had fed them.
And a lot of research sometimes doesn't go into the emotional side. You can see that we did both. I think when people buy today, there has to be that initial sort of spark or emotion. Travel is an emotional buy, and branding is all about the buy. It isn't the selling. You got to know what we have to sell, and that's what the brand is the buy. And these are some of the words that would resonate, especially with visitors, if they knew they were going to have that feeling. But again, when visitors come here, they do things. So we want to match those two questions together. Another follow-up question that related to this was getting into a list of what they felt were the top attractions and events. And again, before we get to that, this was just another way of sort of showing that friendliness and that relaxing sort of atmosphere and environment, and that we've got those traits and we need to use them to the best advantage. And even our potential visitors perceive us to have those traits. So again, we want to make sure that we really show this and in any messaging and future communication efforts. This is the question which again was open-ended. They identified specifically these attractions and events. And these are the top 10. Yes, there's others that would have followed behind it, but these are again by mention, frequency, and they're across the four audiences here. Not surprising to see the Omaha Zoo up there again, College World Series, Cornhuskers football, our Nebraska Sandhills, our Scottsbluff National Monument, State Capitol Building, Chimney Rock. And again, when you look at especially these numbers that are in bold, these are ones that sort of are strong but also tie in across those four audiences. And again, in most cases, we wanted to look at this listing in addition to that open-ended questions on what they thought our images were overall. Another research question which was closed-ended, in other words, this was a list of 25 descriptive statements, was to get the view again across the four audiences. And again, we would want to sort of match this with the previous questions, but these are ones that they would check off. You can see that these are the first 9 of the 25, and we all should feel very good about the results here because we scored very high. You can see that this is an average rating. It's on a 5-point scale, and that anything over a 4-point means that we are delivering on it, and that really does relate to Nebraska and what it's offering. And again, you're going to see that in this case, that the visitor puts a higher rating, especially after those first 2 statements of them getting the experience they expected. We may be harder on ourselves because we're residents, stakeholders, and again, we may feel that there's things that maybe are missing that we would like to see, but from a visitor perspective, and that's who we're wanting to encourage, especially the potential ones, we do have a high rating. So again, you can see from this closed-ended question, wide open spaces is up there, so we just need to recognize that and use it to our best advantage. We're warm and friendly people. That's absolutely important. In fact, that's one of those key criteria that if you don't have, people won't show up. They want a relaxing atmosphere. We've got that mood. Beautiful nature. We're clean. We're affordable. Outdoor recreational activities. We have a history and a heritage, and that we're good value. So those are very important ones that need to be recognized. But also, I think we want to sort of bolster and make sure that we keep a constant eye, and that those are going to be even stronger as it relates to the Nebraska brand.
And Don, notice too, and our audience, that notice how the numbers are all among the 4 categories with a little bit of variance there. They all are fairly similar, and that's very good news. That means our visitors, the people who haven't been here, our residents and stakeholders are all of the same belief as far as these key drivers.
Now the next slide is in the middle of the pack, 9 more descriptive statements. And again, you can see, especially from visitors and potential visitors, some are close to that 4-point, which we say is you're really delivering on it. But these are things that I think we want to maybe take a good look at and make sure that we're going to make sure that this does tie into the Nebraska experience. But it's going to be this next slide, which really is sort of the bottom 9 or 7, which really relates that maybe we could improve or do better. As you can see, certainly our visitors score it much higher than us that live within the state. But you can see that some of these things we don't have total control on, especially the last statement, Nebraska has good weather. That's out of our control and so forth. But maybe we could become more year-round. Maybe they're perceiving that we are seasonal, that we could have more entertainment, especially in the evening, that we could have, given all that factor, that we could then have a higher rating as even a more reputable and a unique destination. But that all comes to the visitor understanding who we are and what we have to offer. And again, it's not necessarily that we've had all the resources to be able to communicate some of that. So again, we're taking the results of this question, the previous 2. Remember, these are only 3 out of probably 15 questions that related to this brand image work, but they're important ones.
So we also talked to some key state business leaders in a focus group environment. Bailey Lauerman did that, and they brought some really great feedback as well. Because it isn't just the statistical data, it's also the focus groups. Don and I did a series of focus groups, and Bailey Lauerman did as well with some of the state leaders. And these are some of their key findings too, that the state is a great place to live and invite people to visit. It has strong work ethic, it's business friendly, there's a high quality of life here. That tourism is an important part of the state's economic development fabric, does generate new revenue and has the potential to generate even more revenue. And that there's a full commitment to building our destination brand through building more attractions, more incentives for people to come here and visit, and hopefully increase government funding. One of the key things out there right now is that from a state level, it's a very competitive landscape. Florida now is going from $50 to $100 million in tourism funding. California now is looking at going from 50 to 100 million. Every state is upping the game because they know they need to be more competitive to get that value tourism dollar. So we have to be cognizant of the environment that we're playing on a national platform here.
And Gary, I think they recognize that tourism can provide an ROI and that there's strong results, this new money coming in and helping our economy. and a business case is presented, and they're starting to recognize that it's very complementary to all their other economic development efforts. Also, we want to stress here when it comes to the survey work, we didn't just survey people that came here for leisure on vacation. This was all visitors, including business travelers. They're here for corporate or for conventions, and also that major big one called VFR, Visiting Friends and Relatives. So when we're getting these insights, it wasn't just leisure-based. It was all visitors, and again, we've combined them to get their overall view. But it's good to see that the corporate community, those major corporations in the state, feel that they have a role to be able to communicate, and that the Nebraska brand is important to them as well. And again, they feel that they could have a stronger bond in co-branding Nebraska with those that are related into the visitor industry. So what are some of the major conclusions? And again, there's probably more than these four, but we just wanted to reinforce this because these are the guidelines and the advice that we need to recognize. And I'll just start the first one, but Gary, I know you're going to continue on and elaborate on a number of these. But I think we need to know that when it comes to attractions and activities, it's not only city-based, but it's rural-based. And Nebraska has a lot of assets that are recognized, some maybe more than others, but it's the story that we're going to tell. It isn't about the place where we get it. It's literally, that's where you're going to find it, but it's that experience. And again, this very first conclusion is that we do have some key ones. Those are our destination drivers now. We should continue to invest, but they're going to tell a story and work with others. But again, you can see, especially as we get out of our major centers, that our history, our heritage, the outdoor recreation, the wide open spaces has the greatest opportunity to be able to draw visitors as well.
And you can see that these emotional appeals that came out very clearly, the sense of friendliness, the relaxation, fun, safe, and peaceful, were all very, very prevalent. And it really kind of segues into point 3, which the idea of what really do we feel out of all of this really kind of coalesces and helps define the Nebraska brand. And certainly number 1 tells you what the attractions are, but I think number 3, and this is very important, one of the key attractions to this state are you. You, the people of Nebraska, who are out there being friendly, engaging, hospitable. I've seen a number of interviews with Bruce Stern, who was talking about the movie recently, and maybe some of you did or did not like the movie, but he asked about his character, and he said, you know, the person I played is someone who you don't find on either coast. Somebody who is hardworking, straight-talking, thoughtful, kind, and optimistic. And that's really what I think this brand is all about. It's combining the physical assets that we have with the strength and character of its people. And we think that is a very important thing to go out there and talk about, because not many states go out there and promote the people. Las Vegas is a lot of things, but you're not really talking about Vegas people out there when you're going there. So we think that this is a great lure to help along with some of the other great physical attractions we have. And that we need to continue to be competitive in telling this story to both our out-of-state and in-state residents. You know, the United States, about 2 years ago, created the first ever, probably more than 20 years, international marketing program, Brand USA, to bring people from around the world here. The states that are going to be the most successful are the ones that are going to have the depth and resources to be able to work with this organization to maximize this investment that's going on. Nebraska wants its share of visitors. It's going to work very hard to do it, but we have to remember to stay competitive. So Don, we'll take a look now at our brand promise.
Yes.
And this is really, when people talk about what is the Nebraska brand, this, in our opinion, is the Nebraska brand. And what you're going to see here in the next slide is a long paragraph with a lot of words in it, and it's never going to be featured necessarily on a website or a visitor brochure. It's not necessarily going to be something that the consumer will see, but what it will be is this internal guiding star. Every really brand-centric organization out there, Disney being a great example of that, knows what business they are in. Disney is not, for example, about theme parks and movies, although they do that. Their whole motivation, their brand, is about creating magical moments in people's lives. That magical moment you'll never see on their website, but you certainly feel it when you see all of their communications. That's what we're talking about here. So we took a lot of the words, a lot of the feedback that we got through this research, and put it into what you're about to see in terms of this brand promise. And then Kathy and her team, as well as Bailey Lyerman, can use it to go out there and tell that compelling Nebraska story. This, in our view, is the Nebraska brand. So here it is, a lot of words. But what we learned, and again, we heard that wide open space is not a bad thing, and actually a good thing. Nature's majestic migrations, the pioneering spirit of its people that goes back generations. We heard that a lot in the focus groups. Certainly we talk about the attractions from the zoo and aquarium, the football, College World Series, certainly the Sandhills. But then you get into what I feel are the more powerful attributes. The fact that it's relaxed and peaceful, that embraces the true values of America's home and heart. You're immersed in certainly the historic trails, sites, and outdoor recreation pursuits, which we have in abundance. But whether it's on its farms or in its exciting urban centers, it's the friendly, honest, and hardworking people who treat newcomers and visitors as family and encourage them to enjoy the simple pleasures of life that count. The Nebraska lure, it's like coming home. Again, it's about the people, the uniqueness, the strength and character of the Nebraska people that are central to this brand. So again, this becomes sort of a strategic platform, a framework in which to go out there and tell the story.
And you can see from a state perspective, this is inclusive. We would hope that each one of us have a visitor industry business, but even as a resident, see themselves within this brand promise, because we all at the end of the day need to deliver on it. Really the face of the Nebraska brand is you, it's residents. That's part of the experience, but also showing those people that haven't been here before those good things that you would suggest to them and even participate. And that way they're getting to know our life here in this state. And that's so important for us to declare it, but also that's what visitors want to do. They want to get a better appreciation.
So from the strategic portion of this exercise, some of the next steps we're going to do is take all of this information, put it into a compelling blueprint and summary report, come up with some conclusions, and then start working with our friends at Bailey Lyerman to start working on the execution of that. And with that, we would actually like to introduce Rich Clausen from Bailey Lyerman to talk about the next steps in terms of the creative.
Great.
Rich.
Thanks, Gary. Don, thank you. Great work. I think as a brand partner for the state of Nebraska and Nebraska Tourism Commission, what's refreshing about everything that we just saw and that Gary and Don went through, and as a native Nebraskan, is that really there are no surprises here. Those of us who have lived here, whether it's a month or it's a lifetime, we understand that these are things that we hold kind of near and dear and are very true and real for our state. And I think that's good. These guys are the tops at what they do in the country for the tourism and travel segment. They would also tell you, and I don't think they would say this lightly, that there are many presentations like this that they give for whether it's states or cities or areas around the country where all the news is not good and they have to deliver bad news and they have to say, well, we really, I know you're thinking this, but honestly this is how you're perceived, and what you think is most important is actually way down on the list. Here with this, we know exactly what we're finding and what we're seeing, and it's true. And in a grading, if this were a grade that you would get as a kid in a school, this would be A's and B's, and probably a lot more A's and high B pluses. So we should all feel very good about that. So we're going to go on and talk about really the current view and perception, which was just shared by Gary and Don. This new brand research, which I think is the most extensive that the state has ever had, conducted and commissioned. really tells us not only what we believe about ourselves, but what other people, how they perceive us and how they perceive our state and the attractiveness of that. And then, as Gary and Don said, the really exciting thing is that what we believe to be true and what they believe to be attractive are not, they're not far apart. There's a lot of good things to sell, and we can certainly do that. So our charge at Bailey Lowerman in partnering with Nebraska Tourism Commission is to do a couple of things, and one is we have to have a belief. We have to believe in something. As Nebraskans, as a partner in business here, we believe as the partner that we need to want even more for our state. And what I mean by that is we should, as people of the state of Nebraska, as businesses, as tourism industry and attraction proprietors, we should want to have more revenue in the state. We should want to attract more people to visit our state. We should want to create more fans of our state and all that we have to offer and our people. So I don't think we need to be shy. There's this sense of humble pride that we as Nebraskans kind of have in our DNA, where it's an aw shucks attitude. Well, we need to kind of kick that to the curb a little bit and be very, very proud and not be afraid to tell people why we're proud. So that's what we believe. The question then becomes, where do we want to take Nebraska tourism in the future? And so in our mind, and from my perspective, it's not about what we have done and always doing what we've always done. It's more about what is next and what will help us as an industry and as a state, as a people, to do the next great thing. Not necessarily the next biggest thing, but the next great thing. Because we're always growing. There are two, I guess, absolutes in life. You either grow or you die. And we choose to grow. And we want to take the very best of what this state has and put it out there and invite people to buy in. Here's what really our desire is. The desire is a need to be aspirational. And what I mean by that is we want to push to do better and do more and in some respects do bigger. I was asked once, what does that mean? And I gave a couple of examples. One would be about 10 or 12 years ago, the city of Omaha had aspirations for potentially hosting the Olympic swim trials. And if you were to ask the city of Omaha or anybody 10 or 12 years ago, really, do you think that that's possible? Do you think that you could do that? And somebody in Omaha said, or a group of people in Omaha said, you darn right we can. We can do that. And not only can we pitch it and go for it, we think we can win it. It's winnable. Now, there are a lot of people around the country who would think, well, I think San Diego or Los Angeles or maybe a destination in Florida would be better because it's warmer weather, it's more swimming, it's yada, yada, yada. And you're going to do what in Omaha? You're going to hold it inside what was then the Quest Center? Yes, absolutely. And not only did we get the business, we got it for return business. So the next time the Olympic swim trials are held, they'll be in Omaha again. And not only did we get the business, but we set outstanding attendance records. And not just from people coming into the state, but from people within the state wanting to go and see the trials as well. That's what we mean by being aspirational. Who says we can't do that? That's part of our Nebraska spirit. Really what this means is that we need to be authentic and true to who we are. And when you think about all of the discoveries and the insights that were shared in Gary and Don's presentation, there were some truths that came out of what we have to offer as a state. We don't have oceans, we don't have beaches, we don't have mountains per se, the Rocky Mountains, and we're a gateway to many of those things. But what we do have is very unique to Nebraska, and that includes the things to see and do, as well as the people and the spirit of how those experiences are delivered. When people connect with Nebraskans, they connect with a very kind, gentle, approachable soul, and people that are very nice, people that are very helpful. You don't get that everywhere. These gentlemen, Gary and Don, travel all over the country, and I think they would tell you that this is very unique to not just the Midwest, but it's unique to this country, and it's something worth celebrating. So at the same time, is that attractive in and of itself to visitors, to people who are visiting for pleasure or for business? And I think the answer is, I don't think anything is exclusively the one thing that will attract people to Nebraska. It's a combination. It's the very unique things, but it's delivered by this spirit, this humanity that Gary and Don described that is our people. So I think we need to be authentic and true to who we are, and that will manifest itself, I think, in great conversations and in a great story to tell. So really the attraction of Nebraska is this, and this is the final thought that I'll leave you with. It is a blend of rational truth and emotional depth. And that's what's going to guide our efforts. So what are our efforts? Let's define that. The efforts will be the positioning that we take for promoting this Nebraska brand. It will need to be relevant. It'll need to be differentiated from all of the surrounding states, and it will need to be compelling. We have to give people a reason to come and visit. We believe we have those in abundance. The other great thing is that there's rational truth and emotional depth with the passion of the people in this state and within this industry. There are people that are on this webinar right now who have a small business in western Nebraska. I grew up in western Nebraska. I know so many people like you that are excited and passionate about what you're doing. This brand, when it is unveiled, and Kathy will detail a little bit more about the timing on that, should be something that everybody in this state is proud of, including the people at the very smallest of businesses to the most giant of Fortune 500 companies. Everyone should be proud of this brand, proud of this state, and not be afraid to share that pride. Humble pride is good, but we want an engaged, fanatical pride of Nebraskans, and we believe that that's going to happen. With that, I will turn it over to Kathy, and we will, I think, take some questions for the collective group here.
Yes, thank you so much, Rich. Rich Clausen with Bailey Lauerman, and we have, bringing back to the group, we have Gary Sherwin and Don Anderson, you guys are on the sides, with Believable Brands. And at this time, we're going to ask Heather and Angela that are here with us as well, fielding questions to let us know if we have any. And before I ask them, I'm going to remind everyone that you can send in your questions and we will address those if you send them to the email addresses. And there's two of them here, and I'm going to turn around and do angela.white@nebraska.gov, and we have heather.hogue, Hogue, @nebraska.gov. So please feel free to send those emails to us right now so we can field some questions. Heather and Angela, do we have any questions at this time?
I did get one about business travelers. You touched on that a lot, and they were just wondering what portion of the study results were from business travelers.
Thank you. The question is that there was mention of the business traveler. So what portion of the findings, or how was that component engaged with the survey results?
It wasn't the overwhelming majority. In fact, when you, and again, we've looked at the visitor profile for the whole state of Nebraska, the business component is always going to be in the minority. The leisure and the visiting friends and relatives is always the larger. So I think of the total sampling, it was something around 10 or 15%.
So we did go into that market, which is important
Correct.
to remember. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the question.
We have a question from Beatrice. They're asking this to Kathy. What did you find most surprising about the results?
Good question. Thank you from Beatrice. I think what's most surprising about the results, and that we can really wrap our hands around, is the fact that there were no controversial issues. And when you have controversial issues, such as your industry leaders believe in one way, but the visitor and your customer is who that is, believes of you having something in another direction, the imbalance is very difficult. And it's very hard to wrap everyone together on that, to bring them all together to move forward with a solid brand promise. We're very, very pleased that we scored so high. Our lowest scored category was weather, which we all know, even today, we cannot control that. And that was something that we were very pleased about. If I was to bring this report card home when I was younger, I would have received quite a bit of praise. So I would have been proud of it. So thank you, Beatrice, for that question. Any other thoughts to that, please?
Maybe as a reinforcing what Kathy had to say was that, people are focusing on things that they thought were important that would drive visitors here. But we have the greatest opportunity to those that are potential to plant the right stories. In a lot of cases, those people are either neutral or have no appreciation totally what Nebraska defines it, but they're interested. So it's incumbent upon us to communicate what we have the best, to get their attention. And once we get them here, we can tell them we got a lot of things to do, but in the meantime, we got to focus on a few things to get our message out, because there's a lot of other competitors that are doing the same thing. But we scored well. This was a good news report, but there's things that we can do that would focus more on connecting with those potential visitors, and even those that would want to come back here again and maybe do other things they hadn't done. But we need to have the resources to be able to do that too. We can come up with this brand and its messaging, but at the end of the day, we need to make sure that that gets out there and focused and segmented to those that want to listen. But that's exciting. It means we do have that potential, and we just need to go forward.
And I think the other thing from my perspective was, as we've talked about, is that I think most of the residents would all agree that their neighbors and friends are a unique and special type of person. The fact that that was recognized by both visitors and even non-visitors, the fact that there is a special Nebraskan type of person who is different than what they find at home, and they find that very appealing, I think that's a wonderful gift. There are very few destinations that can really say our people are a major draw. Rich and I were talking earlier about if he didn't want to go to New York because the people had some great attractions, but the people were scary. Here, we've got wonderful attractions and great people. That's a terrific combination, and that was kind of refreshing to see.
To qualify that was back in the 70s. But the smart thing is that the city of New York recognized that.
Right.
And they saw the potential of tourism. You know, New York has not always been a tourist destination. Right. It's been a destination for business and commerce, I think, forever. I mean, it's the world's greatest city by anybody's definition. But it's not always been a family-friendly or even a tourist destination. But they recognize the power of tourism, and many mayors ago, and it may have been Giuliani who said, we need to make New York more friendly. And I'll bet in his mind he said, we need to make it more Nebraska-like. Because they have all of the sites, all of the attractions. And imagine if we were just a little bit nicer. Imagine if we weren't, the stereotypical New Yorker. And so, to me, surprising in terms of the context of the question, it's I don't have a most surprising thing about the information that was shared, but I felt this huge confirmation or affirmation that what we have is very marketable, right, and that people want it. So now it's let's make sure that the message, the position is compelling, and that we push it out as much as we can, and really engage the people in the state to begin telling the story as well, because our resources are not what our surrounding states are. So we're going to need to rely on advocating for more, but also advocating that the 1.8 million people in this state become huge fans and spread the word.
Thank you. Angela? Other questions, please?
We have another question. Given the survey results, where do you see our best opportunities for growth in tourism in Nebraska?
Oh, that's a good question. I think that, I think I'll ask Rich also to jump in on that. I think our best potential for growth is maybe twofold. I think Nebraskans need to believe in Nebraska. So some of that growth can come from ourselves and traveling and believing in our product and experiencing it, and then sharing that information, sharing that experience with either friends and relatives and family reunions, or with the business travel if you're having someone who's coming to your business. I think there's a lot of opportunity for growth there. Otherwise, I also think some of our key markets are going to be in some of our very competitive demographics. We have states that we keep track of who seem to have a great bit of interest in us. California is one of the first states. It's number one that seeks information from us as a state for things to do or for vacation packages. Next to that would be Texas and Illinois. Some of those make sense. Fourth or fifth usually on the list is Nebraska. They contact us seeking information about what to do in their own state. So I think it's a twofold answer on that question. I think one would be our own encouragement to get Nebraskans out, believing, seeing, and engaging and sharing what we have. And the other one would be going into some of our competitive markets that are interested in what we have by those types of standards. Rich, would you like to support or add anything?
Oh, I support it wholeheartedly. I think that the two things. One is I can't believe how many people have never been west of Lincoln or west of Grand Island, and they literally have lived here almost their entire life. And to me, that just blows my mind. I grew up in western Nebraska, so I'm very comfortable, and I've been to every corner of the state. But I can't believe, especially if 2/3 of our population is Lincoln East, we need to get those people and others out west. And quite frankly, we need to get the people that are in the western part of the state where I grew up, have them travel to Omaha, have them travel to Lincoln, up to northeast Nebraska and to Lewis and Clark area and all that. That is nothing. It's nothing like when I was growing up. You'll be totally amazed at how cool it is, all of those areas. So I think we need to do that. And one thing, and this is not to give a promotional plug, but I will, the Nebraska Passport Program, which is going to be introduced for 2014 on, I believe, May 1st,
Right.
Is a terrific way to get out and see the state. And if you can go to visitnebraska.com and you'll find the passport link, and the staff will send you a passport. But get out and see the state. It's amazing how much you'll be, I think, just amazed by it. The other thing is that I think that in terms of growth, I think we have an opportunity to open people's eyes, just generally around the country. There are media tours that under Kathy's leadership and Angela White that have been very, very successful. And there was a recent article, I believe, in Smithsonian Magazine
Right.
just this last week. It was like 17 or 18 pages dedicated to the crane migration in Nebraska. Unbelievable coverage. Well, we were able to hear, and I'm going on too long, but I want to make this point that if we can get the same reaction of visitors and people within the state that we got from travel writers, when travel writers came to Nebraska, and time after time after time, they would say, I had no idea. Oh my gosh, what an offering you have. Didn't matter where they went in the state. Metro, if it was rural, if it was sandhills, could be furthest west, furthest east, north, south. They were blown away. They were surprised. I can't believe you've got that. So I think growing in this state, the growth of tourism, is just opening eyes around the country.
Thanks. Going back to the Beatrice question about what we were most surprised about, I don't know if surprised or pleased would be the appropriate word to use here, but I am just really excited for the opportunity that a brand promise has that is gone through the scientific approach and methodology of research that we can share with our corporate leaders, our industry leaders. We can have buy-in from communities and counties and businesses and attractions across the state that will be willing to see that, yes, I can resonate with what this is and what the potential campaign is, because we feel it too. So I think that camaraderie and bringing everyone together is going to be very, very beneficial for our industry, and it's very exciting. We've never done that approach before, and I think it'll pay tenfold. On another additional note is, we do plan to unveil the 2014 Passport program in May 1st, so please be watching for that. In addition, the creative campaign and component that will complement the brand survey findings will be unveiled on May 7th and 8th out in Mullen, when the commissioners have their meeting in May. And Rich, if you briefly want to touch on, now we've done the scientific component, bringing in the information through the funnel. Your creative team has been in step and strides with us in tandem to be preparing for that and moving forward.
30 seconds, here's what we're
30
doing.
seconds, sir.
What you saw is you saw a linear process with strategy. Now we get into an organic process. We go from science now to art. And we are working on 2 different pathways that we could go creatively. We're going to share that with the marketing committee of the Nebraska Tourism Commission and Kathy, and we will have a consensus of a direction that we want to go, and then we will look at all the connection points that we could possibly have with potential visitors. And that includes television, video, social media, traditional print, radio, across the board, as well as events and sponsorships and partnerships.
We're very excited about that. And before we leave you today, I want to thank Don and Gary so much for their work and efforts, for coming in cold, if you will, not no pun intended, to the state of Nebraska to conduct and lead us through this process, which has never been done before at this level, to gather it in. And I'll leave them with last parting little words. I just want to remind everyone before we do part that this webinar will be posted and will be kept up on our website, which is visitnebraska.gov. Again, our website is visitnebraska.gov. It will go up tomorrow so that you can share that and encourage others to watch and review the findings again. And please like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. That's how you know about all these great opportunities that are occurring out there. Thank you again from me. Final closing words from Gary and Don, our brand strategist.
Well, one of the things I want to just add for the folks who aren't familiar with tourism marketing, and I have to say this in all seriousness because tourism is a really fun industry to be a part of, but it's a lot of work. It takes a lot of work to be a competitive destination, whether at the state, local, or regional level. You really have to get in there, and while we're selling fun and we're selling a great product, it takes a really skilled staff to be able to understand the value of doing the deep dive and deep think like you've seen here. It takes a really strong agency like Bailey Lauerman to be able to understand and interpret this. This is hard work, and while we are dealing with fun things, I want to say, as somebody who's from California, and I know Don's from Indiana, we travel all over the country, and we say this, and we're not saying it because we've been working with you. We applaud your professionalism and all the excellent work that you do, because there's not as much quality work as maybe you think there is out in other parts of the world. You guys do some superb work, and this is not easy to understand in terms of taking a risk. Sometimes you get information that's not always pleasant, but you took the risk because you wanted to make Nebraska tourism better. So thank you for that, and I applaud you, and I hope the people of Nebraska appreciate the work that you do.
Thank you so much, and we hope you've enjoyed this webinar, and we look forward to working with all of our partners and new partners and existing partners in the future. Great things to come, so thank you so much.
Thank you.